Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from ejsllc.com. This video is another in my practice session series for the Red Hat Certified Specialist and Linux Diagnostic and Troubleshooting Exam EX342. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite anyone who's watching, if you haven't subscribed, to click the subscribe button and ring the bell when you do so you know when new content comes available. Also, a reminder that these are my practice sessions for the exam. My exam is just under a week away, so I'm going through all of the posted objectives from Red Hat and I'm either explaining the objective or trying to do some examples related to the objective. And at the end of the video, I will do a little self-assessment and hopefully I'll feel confident with the objective. If not, I still have a little time to do some brushing up and get the information back to the front side of my head. Since I am still in the learning process, these should not be considered tutorials or used as authoritative information. I do try to have the information accurate because hopefully at this point in my preparation I haven't learned something wrong. But since I am still learning, these should not be used as tutorials or considered authoritative information. I put them out on the internet in hopes of those that are preparing for the exam might see some of the stuff that I do in a practice session and get inspired to create their own exercises and maybe hear other explanations of things and just aid in their own preparation. But again, these should not be used as any type of course or tutorial or authoritative information. My voice probably sounds a bit different. The Athens Rock Lobsters had their home opener last night, and of course I had to be there. That's the new hockey team in Athens, Georgia, in the United States. And much yelling occurred, so I'm trying to make it through some of my practice sessions. I'll try to maybe pick up some of the gain in the audio to make it a little bit more listenable. Is that a word? By the time I finally get around to putting these out on the internet. So continuing in the diagnose application issues set of objectives, we're going to look at use standard tools to debug an application. In this, the tools that I know of are strace and I think the other is ltrace. And these are fun little tools. And I say fun just because you can kind of geek out on it. If you're an application developer, you probably use these all the time to see what your application's actually doing as far as how it's interacting with the operating system. For we as system administrators that are not building applications all the time will often use these tools to try to find, the smoking gun of why an application is broken. Other things you can do for debugging applications, many applications are going to have configuration settings that you can turn on debugging, and that helps. I know with doing iSCSI initiator work, you can do -D and then any level of debugging you want. But if there's nothing available to really help you debug an application, these tools can help. So I'm going to close the terminal windows from my other practice session, since generally between practice sessions I'll restore snapshots of my lab VMs to where I'm in a clean environment. Let's pick on lab server 3. I'll go ahead and become root for this, and we'll pick on HTTPD as well. So let me go ahead and install HTTPD. It might help if I actually tell DNF to install HTTPD rather than DNF reading my mind and knowing that I intend for it to install HTTPD. All right, so that's installed, and I'm pretty sure I usually deal with that. Of course, that didn't help at all. I usually am, using systemctl to start this, but for this example, I'm going to try to just run the binary itself, which means I need to look up a couple of things here. Okay, well, I think I need to do -k start. Yeah. All right, so that process is already running. All right, let's pgrep HTTPD. Okay, so nothing's going on there. So the first tool that I'm going to play with is strace. Now there are a variety of different flags for this, but what I have found myself using is basically just the straight up strace command with no other flags. So if I do strace HTTPD-K start, it exited with 0. Which generally tells us that things went well. And these are all the system calls that happened for starting HTTPD. I can do systemctl status HTTPD. It's actually, yeah, the service is not, or the systemctl, or the systemd service is not running, but HTTPD should be a valid process. Yeah, so now HTTPD stop. And let's say that we can't get HTTPD to run. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy httpd.conf to my just root home folder, and we're going to remove this file. And this should make HTTPD fail. So let's try to just start the service. Oh, I'm not root. I must have exited from root. All right, of course that's going to fail because we just killed the configuration file. And yeah, and I mean, if we were troubleshooting this, that's obviously what's going on. But again, this is just to kind of show an example of what you can see with strace. So let's try to strace httpd-k start. Okay, so we got exited with 1, and this is a ton of information. So, you know, now of course HTTPD is quite a you know, complex thing here, but somewhere actually even tells us this here. Well, this is after it has failed. It you know, it wrote, I guess this is probably writing to standard error that no such configuration file is happening. But I'm curious to see if we can find in the output here. You know, let me do this again. Let me clear my screen. I wonder if I could redirect this to, yeah, probably not. Probably have to redirect standard error, which kind of makes sense. So strace, we'll do the same command, except we'll send standard error. All right, this will make this a little bit easier to go through. So what we're looking for is where it tries to, probably is going to try to read. You know, if I was smart, I would do this. Grep conf in trouble. Okay, so there's a line here that's open at, and it's trying to open this, and there is no file or directory. And looks like there's another one of these, and so, you know, it's not clear exactly, you know, which one of these probably broke the application. It is, you know, right now, because we know I blew away that file. But this is an example of if you were using strace to troubleshoot an application, it's not running, you might get the actual error message that you wouldn't see otherwise, or you'll eventually find what it's trying to do and where it is failing. Now, this happens to be a configuration file. There's other things that could be going on, but what strace is doing is what it's doing is showing you all the system calls that an application is trying to do, which can, you know, help you find what is broken that's not allowing this application to run. There was one option, stract, I want to look at, and it might be an ltrace thing. It's like it goes after child processes is what I'm thinking about. And that might be no, it shouldn't just be an ltrace thing. And strace is another one of these commands that there's all sorts of things that you can do with it. I have follow forks, I think is what I'm thinking of, because we would want to know, or potentially we would need to know if, all right, maybe it's not HTTPD that's breaking, but some other process that starts as a part of that. You know, let's try that. Let's see what the end result is. So let's do a word count on trouble. So that was 12,000 lines in trouble. So let's do strace ff for follow. Yeah, it was single dash ff, I think, for follow forks. HTTPD k start trouble 2. So it looks like the ending is about the same, and it's the same number of lines. So I was wondering if it would find some other things. Let's take a look at head for that. Shows the exact what's executed. Anyway, some nifty little things with that. I have a feeling on the exam, unless there's some objective that says, hey, give us this output, it's probably going to be, there will be some application that's broken, and maybe this application doesn't have any type of debug mode, so you're kind of forced to use strace to figure out what about the application is broken. Now there's another one that we can, there's one other thing I thought of. You can run strace and not be a privileged user. So I could do this exact same thing, strace, httpd case start. We might get different errors if we're trying to do some privileged thing as a non-privileged user, but you're not restricted to just being root to run strace. There are some things, for example, let's say that let's say this file was here, httpd.conf. And if your user is not able to read a file, but you're running strace, it might not give you the actual file name. It will just have like this file was opened and on and on and on. For example, let's restore. Yeah, we're going to try something here. So we're going to do sudo. This might still break it, but we'll see what happens. So cp root, have lag on my own VM, httpd.conf, and we'll put that into etc httpd conf. I can type. This is strange. I actually don't have lag on my own. I think I might know what's going on. I run a backup, and that might be because I'm on my wireless network in this particular room, so that might be saturating my my network connection. Anyway, so httpd.conf, put that in etc httpd conf httpd.conf. So we'll get that file back there, and let's try to run this again. So strace. This time we shouldn't have any errors. Yeah, or we did have any. Oh, I'll bet that's because I don't have the rights to do this, which would kind of make sense. Generally, your unprivileged user is not going to be able to start a web server. Let's do this. Now I'm curious. This is something I encourage you to do with your own studies, is try to break stuff, see what happens, because you might encounter something that is broken and you're getting some similar errors that you have done when you were just messing around, and it might help you remember, oh, this is the way to fix something. I'm not going to take a lot of time with this. I'm just curious to see if there's an obvious reason or some smoking gun as to why this didn't work. I'm fairly sure I know the reasons, because this user doesn't have the privileges to run it. Of course, there's 12,000 lines. I'm probably not going to see anything anytime soon that will be useful. All right, I might poke around with that later just out of curiosity. The other tool is ltrace. Or I thought it was ltrace. It's not ftrace, is it? What tool? There. All right, so what I'm thinking of, there's a tool that will that does system calls, and that's strace. And then there's a tool that like traces library calls, is what I'm thinking of. Let's become root again. Maybe DNF to the rescue. Help us find what executable or what package has this, or dynamically linked executables. Well, let's install it. ltrace kind of works similarly to strace, except it is checking library calls instead of system calls. This is one that I think you can run this unprivileged, but you will likely not have a lot of success with it. But let's try our ltrace. Okay, so there was no httpd running, so let's try ltrace, and this might go forever. And that would kind of make sense because it's like constantly calling libraries. All right, so let's kill that config file again. Let's try ltrace. Okay, so there we eventually got the could not open file. What I do want to do though, no, not trouble, I want trouble 4. See if we can find, let me do it the smart way. Grep conf trouble 4. Okay, so the very last thing was, or not very last thing, but that one line that we saw not opening the the configuration file. I myself have not used ltrace. Probably should not be necessarily proud of that, but I have used strace before to troubleshoot some application stuff. I haven't had the need to use ltrace, but I mean it's one of the tools that's available. So if I'm on the exam and I have some application that it can't run and there's no debug and systemctl doesn't tell us anything if it's some type of service, and strace didn't give me anything, I'll use ltrace and try to find some smoking gun. And finding the smoking gun is not always necessarily an easy thing. That's where experience comes in, because I mean I've used Apache, but I'm not a master of Apache. I understand, you have your configuration file that you have to have. That's why I use this example to show what broke looks like for this. But you kind of get a sense of what you would expect a normal application to do, which is it runs, it tries to load its libraries, it looks for a configuration file. And if something's not working, you can kind of start sniffing through logs like this of strace and ltrace and various other things, kind of looking for those basic things that not every application does, but a lot of applications have in common. So I think for the use standard tools to debug an application, I'm not going to consider myself like a passing with flying colors, but I think in the heat of the moment for the exam, strace and ltrace are not the first tools that I go to for debugging. But if my standard things for debugging, which is like debug mode on applications and possibly looking through like non-debug logs to see stuff, if those fail and I do have to go to the strace and strace and ltrace, tools to debug, I think I would probably be able to do what needs to be done for the exam. So if you found this video useful, make sure you do click like. I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, and invite everyone, if you're watching and you haven't subscribed, to click that subscribe button and ring the bell when you do. I think it's been almost 8 months or so since I have posted anything, because I've been on the gauntlet here trying to get through my certification exams, but eventually I will prevail, which means I'll have time to actually put this stuff on the internet. So ringing the bell will let you know when I am able to accomplish that. Regardless, I want to thank you for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.